Welcome to Unpacked, the podcast that examines how technology is reshaping business and our world, with this season unpacking the topic of generative AI. This show is produced by Think Tank at Lab 45, Wipro's Innovation Lab. My name's Stuart Black, and here with me is the voice of the show, Think Tank's innovation lead, Arvind Ravishankar. Arvind, I see we've both got greenery behind us today, breathing nice and clear, I hope.
Yeah, plants help, don't they? They clear up the air and they just make life so much more fun.
Good to see you, Arvind, and as you can tell, both of us have got our greenery behind us so that our air is nice and fresh. I see that your plant has a slightly more generous pot than mine, slightly putting me to shame.
Yes. So I think the analogy, Stuart, is you don't want to live in a one by one. Nor does your plant.
Right.
Your plant also doesn't want to live in a one by one. And the plant you have
Wow.
behind you is a tropical plant. And since I am in a tropical city right now in Chennai in India, I can tell you tropical plants grow huge. Even the one behind me, it's going to grow a lot bigger. And so, yes, that pot needs an upgrade.
Well, as you know, property is at a premium here in London, but I will try and find something slightly bigger so it can grow a little bit, but we can't have it growing too big.
You know what loft. You should do? What you should do is all those books behind you, just skim through them, put it all into your head, and then you can clear away the bookshelf, and then the plant can have a nice place.
Okay, we'll sort this out. We'll give the plant a little bit more of a humane environment so the AI doesn't judge us too harshly.
There you go. All you need to do is download all those books into your head.
Okay, all right, one step at a time. Back to the main topic then. In a few minutes, we're going to have Arvind's deep dive interview with Dr. Srinivas Padmanabhuni, who is an AI thought leader working on responsible AI. Arvind, can you just explain a little bit about this one for us?
Yeah, so, Stuart, what's going to be interesting about this one is Dr. Srinivas has his PhD in common sense reasoning. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who have a PhD in common sense reasoning. And the biggest questions we've been asking today in the world of AI is it reasoning? How is it reasoning? Is this reasoning stable? Will it hallucinate? And so having someone who can talk to us about what is common sense reasoning, how do humans reason? What is the difference between that and AI? It's going to be an interesting topic to unpack.
Sounds great. Well, before we get to it, we're going to look at a couple of stories that are connected to what you're just talking about. And our first story is all about AI hallucinations and how we need to address this and stop ignoring that situation. So the article says that many of us who've tried an AI chatbot have encountered the occasional accuracy issue with facts being confused, conflated, or sometimes coming out just plain wrong. The article suggests we're being too forgiving of these hallucinations, and that while GenAI clearly offers exciting opportunities, it's time to focus on the challenges this accuracy issue causes for data-sensitive users especially. Typical hallucinations might include misidentifying people or providing incorrect technical advice. One big problem has been AI inventing case law, which has not been great for the lawyers who've been using that, relying on it, and then they've been getting into a little bit of trouble. While some experts believe the hallucination problem will be solved fairly soon, others argue that it's just inherent to large language models, and it's the price we pay for the engaging creative content we're after. Arvind, how big is this problem really, and do you believe there's a solution?
So hallucinations is a real problem. The big or small, I think, depends on the use case and how it's being used and where it's being used. I think, Stuart, we did an episode, I believe it's Dr. Anastasia, right, where she spoke about how it's really important for everybody to be educated about this technology. And if you're educated about the technology, then you will use some level of human judgment and human discrimination when you work with the technology. You won't blanket work with the technology and think it's the next Oracle. It isn't. It's going to make a lot of mistakes. It's very early in its development. It is going to hallucinate. And so where you use it, how you use it, what you use it for, using your human judgment and discrimination is really, really important at this stage. There is a lot of research going on how to solve the hallucination problem. And in many instances, we are going to solve it. We're going to use techniques like grounding. We're going to use different types of new neurosymbolic AI. And so over time, the problem will reduce. But in its early stages, I definitely think that the best defense today we have against hallucinations is human judgment and human discrimination. So don't use the technology blindly. Don't blindly understand, or don't blindly rely on what it does and what it says. Use some discrimination, right? And that's your best defense at this point.
Well, easier said than done. I think a lot of people who do use this are really assuming that everything is correct, and maybe falling over as a result of that. So do you think it's about raising awareness of this hallucination problem and making sure everybody's clued into how it can affect things?
Absolutely. I mean, okay, so you go on the internet today. I'll give you an example. You go on the internet today, or even 10 years back, you went on the internet and you said, I have a headache and that's my symptom. What could be wrong with me? And it would spew out 100, 200 different things, which would not be an issue at all, right? So the internet itself, when you do a search today, the internet gives you a lot of information that is not accurate. But you use your human judgment, you look at the sources. So if you're smart, you would look at trustable sources of information when it comes to medical news, or when it comes to scientific news. You would look at trustable sources of information, and so you don't believe everything that's written on the internet today. And I think same way, you got to have some level of discrimination and judgment when you work with AI. It's the same. It's going to make a lot of mistakes, and after all, if you think about it, the AI is trained on all the data that humans fed into the internet.
So naturally, it will be a bit flawed.
It will be a bit flawed. If you can't rely on the internet and you use discrimination, then how can you not use discrimination on something that's working off the internet, right? So yeah, absolutely. It'll sort itself over time, but for now, you got to use your own judgment.
That brings us to our second story, which is all about the workplace impact of the latest multimodal AI models, such as ChatGPT 4o, with an AI analyst suggesting that manual labour might be safe in this situation, working with this technology, but maybe data-driven jobs are at risk. Let me explain a little bit more. The new generation of multimodal GenAI can input and output text, audio, and images, and this represents a major leap forward from the ChatGPTs and other generative AI you might have used so far. The analyst Maribel Lopez says manual labourers, such as plumbers and electricians, will be able to use the tool as a troubleshooting device. It won't affect their jobs, but people working in data-driven roles, maybe the risks are higher, maybe their jobs are at risk, maybe they're going to become obsolete. Arvind, is this scaremongering? What do you make of it?
No, I think there's some level of truth to that, Stuart. And in fact, I think what surprised the world in general when ChatGPT came out was most people thought that AI would first replace the drudgerous manual tasks, right? And the creative ones would be the ones that go last. But what ChatGPT surprisingly showed us was that the data-driven, more intelligent jobs could also be affected. It's not just the manual jobs which will be affected. And so that was a big turn in the story when ChatGPT came out. And so I think that's kind of sort of what this analyst is alluding to here. And I think I do agree that the manual jobs are not going to be the ones affected because AI doesn't have any manual skills today. It has no physical skills, right? Most of its skills are in reasoning. And so the data-driven jobs are the ones that will be impacted. But I think what we have to understand though is the impact, I think it will be more of an assistive technology still at this point. I don't think it's going to replace anyone yet. Not at the level of maturity it is today. It will be an assistive technology. It may help you do your job better. Maybe it will do 30 to 40% of your job, which means that you have opportunities to grow, upskill, become more, skilled at other things, right? And more
Right.
sophisticated in what you do. So, but I don't see it replace jobs until and unless the only thing you're doing is looking at numbers in one sheet and punching it in another sheet, in which case, yes, I think even technology today can do it, right? So I think as
Okay.
long as you're not, yeah, I don't think it'll replace it.
Okay, interesting. And how can companies like Wipro capitalize on the competitive advantages offered by multimodal Gen AI?
Oh man, the opportunities are tremendous, because what multimodal opens up for you is many different ways to now communicate with technology, and many different ways for technology to communicate with you. At the end of the day, if you really think about it, generative AI, the biggest breakthrough is that you now have a natural way to communicate with machines, and machines now have a natural way to communicate with you, which didn't exist before. And with multimodal, the world just opens up. And so from consulting to new products, new platforms, services, Wipro has a plethora of opportunities we can go after, not just any one particular opportunity.
So, Arvind, we have an interview with Dr. Srinivas Padmanabhuni. Can you just tee this up a little bit more before we dive in?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of us today, because of ChatGPT's rise, a lot of us associate LLMs, large language models, as the beginning and end of AI, right? Everything is LLMs. That's how the world is looking at it, and LLMs can do everything. But that's actually not the case. LLMs are a very specific form of artificial intelligence, and they are limited in their applications. And what Dr. Srinivas is going to talk to us today, and what we're going to unpack with him, is um, what type of reasonings or what type of reasoning capability do LLMs have? And are LLMs similar to us humans in how they reason, right? Can they reason in all different situations? And so this is what he's going to be talking to us about. So it's going to be really interesting, Stuart, to unpack this with Dr. Srinivas.
Great stuff. Well, without further ado, let's jump into the interview with Dr. Srinivas Padmanabhuni. Our think tank focuses on researching emerging technologies that will shape your future. From generative AI to exoskeletons, we study the impact these technologies will have on business, humanity, and our planet. And through our podcast, newsletters, and social media content, we have a direct line to a truly global emerging technology community. So if you'd like to find out more about the impact these technologies will have on your business, then reach out to our team at lab45thinktank.com.
So, Dr. Srinivas, you got your PhD from University of Alberta, and what was your PhD in?
My PhD area was in what is called as common sense reasoning. Of
I love that. Okay. Oh my God. Everybody should get a PhD in that.
yeah, no, the topic is important because what happens is the digital circuitry, right? It only understands zero one, right? Yes, no.
Yep.
But the reality of the world is most of the time the actual working knowledge with which humans work is always probabilistic or somewhere approximation, right? You say it may rain, right? There is a high
Correct.
probability of something happening.
Correct.
It'll never say that it will exactly rain
It
or
will rain.
I will definitely come. But the point, what is happening is the digital logic, as is currently, you know, followed as a circuitry and the concept of the old Aristotelian logic, is just not enough to capture human level reasoning. That is the main idea.
Oh, that is just amazing. So, the traditional logic that is taught to us in
Is zero
schools
one, right? True and false.
is 0, 1, right? And even in our GMAT, GRE, they try to say it's, but what you're saying is that that is just one part of our reasoning. There's
Correct.
a
Very
lot
small
more,
part, right?
very small part.
Yeah.
So then the way AI reasons today, it's a very, very narrow, myopic way of reasoning.
Yeah, see,
and humans reason a lot more.
correct, correct. That is why, all this talk of AGI and all is really too premature and it's only marketing. So I'm very
Really?
shocked actually. I want to write a big white paper on all this, stop all this marketing around AGI, baby AGI. We are way far away from there. It's not there, very, very, very far. So
Wow. Okay. This is amazing. So, um, but when I interact with Chat GPT, sometimes it comes up with such good answers, Dr. Srinivas. It's difficult for me to believe that there isn't something behind it, right? That
uh,
we don't understand.
you see, that is something I would say. That is a magic of statistics. It's not magic of AI. See, what happens is if you feed billion sentences, right? That billion sentences becomes the knowledge of the engine behind it. So it's possible that there are certain facts somewhere written on the internet or somewhere where it has picked up from. So it's not something which is able to invent anything new. In fact, they're very poor at inventing new knowledge unless it is actually coming from somewhere, some large corpus existing somewhere. So
Very, very, very interesting. Okay, very interesting. So you don't agree then with Peter Diamandis, Elon Musk? You think all these OpenAI founder Sam Altman, you think all of them are a little more on the hype cycle?
it is because, see, today, if you look at some of the work they're doing in the agents, right? This is something I've been telling 30 years back, saying that unless you really have a common sense level agents, right, which can think about, see, ultimately reasoning, right? You cannot just think about based on existing facts. You should be able to, do three things. One is basically based on existing facts, derive new facts. That's what the Europe, typical Euclidean logic is all about. Then you have the whole machine learning task where you have a lot of examples from which you try to generalize. And that is what the current OpenAI is all about, right? You have a large corpus on that you're trying to generalize the pattern from there. But if you look at the bigger common sense element which is missing is what is the abductive reasoning. Abductive reasoning is like if you see an effect, what could be the cause? You should be able to reason with certain probabilities, not again exact science. That is where this common sense reasoning element is very effective, saying that if you had some symptom and you want to see the root cause. So that is where it's not like a 0 1. It has many possible causes. Out of that, one of them could be, attributed to this as a major cause. So
Very
some part
interesting.
of it is attributed in Bayesian reasoning and all, but the point is reasoning should consist of all the three. Deductive is important, inductive, which is machine learning, is important, and abductive is also important.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have to unpack this a little bit with you. So, deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, abductive reasoning, right? And so today you were saying that AI is all inductive reasoning.
The
It
machine
is
learning
not
driven, machine learning driven.
machine learning driven
But
and is not abductive.
no,
Could
no,
you
it's
tell
not
me what is the
deductive.
difference between deductive and abductive?
So deductive is basically like what was there in 80s of AI, which is expert systems, right? You had
Mm,
a couple of basic facts and couple of rules, right? On the basis of which you could derive new facts. Like for example, if you say all
mm.
days sun rises in the east, today is another
Okay, I
day.
get it.
So
Got it.
so
So
it's like
today's
the
sunrise
modus
in the
ponens,
east.
modus tollens,
Sure,
Aristotelian logic,
sure.
Euclidean logic. We had
Yep, yep,
geometry axioms, right? Theorems.
yep. Yeah, this is exactly the GMAT, by the way.
Correct. That is the
This
logical
is
reason, right? That is the
correct.
conventional
Yep,
deductive reason.
yep.
But the point is, what has happened is the community of the second one, inductive reasoning, the deep learning neural networks and current chat GPT and transformers, they only stressed the second part, which is the inductive reasoning. But even in the research community, actually, people have been talking about at least bringing deductive into it. So we should combine them. So there should be
Mm.
world knowledge, which is rules and all that. And that combined with maybe the inductive system should probably be better off than just saying that I'll depend on statistical inference only. So that is realized, but still the common sense element is far away. The third one, the abductive.
Wow. So if the current GPT models, etc., if they are only trained on inductive reasoning, how are they able to how are they able to achieve such high scores on SATs and GMAT and pass the bar exam? You feel it's
That's
all pattern, previous patterns, and it's
statistical.
not doing any.
Statistical. See, very simple. See, when look at Google machine translation. Let's take the history of machine translation. Till few years back, it was neural. It was basically expert linguist knowledge into the conventional first term, deductive reasoning, right? Where the grammar rules, the language models, etc., were created by experts, and that was used to derive the translation. But now, a simple fact that law of large numbers, if you collect large number of aligned
Hmm.
corpus, which is aligned translate statements, Google proved that it can be as effective or better than even the best of the best translation experts. And that same truth holds. Only thing is, machine translation scope has gone beyond just the neural machine translation of trained corpus of million sentences to now billions and trillions of sentences which OpenAI has scraped from the internet and trained. So it is an order of magnitude better. But ultimately, what is ChatGPT? It is basically predicting the next character given the previous few characters. That is it. Technically, it is nothing but the biggest statistical engine out there. There's hardly any brain, hardly any logic, hardly any intelligence. So it is the dumbest of the dumbest application. Like, I'll take my neck out there and stick my neck out there.
I love it. Okay. No, we need different points of view, right, Dr. Srinivas? We can't have everybody with the same point of view. And this is amazing. You're the first one, actually, the second one in our podcast now to have this opinion. I think there was another professor, a very renowned CMU professor, who also has a similar opinion. Um, Tell me about abductive reasoning. What is abductive reasoning?
Okay. Abductive reasoning is primarily, if you look at, when you get, let's say, high temperature, right? So when you go to the doctor will never say that it is exactly because of common cold, or it could also be because of malaria, or it could be
Yep.
because of something like maybe special case of dengue. So there are
Yep.
many multiple causes for an effect. So
Yep.
what happens is you have the effect and you try to discover what is the probability of a certain cause having caused that. And in that case, what happens is, in the conventional logic, which is deductive reasoning, if you have to derive a statement C from, let's say, A, you have to have a logical rule like A implies B, B implies C. That's why C is derived. But given A implies B, there is nothing which says I can derive A from B. So if B is true, I cannot say A is true. It could be multiple such antecedents,
Mm,
right, or
mm, mm,
clauses.
mm.
So abductive reasoning kind of goes away from the conventional logical scenario where it has to be cast into a logical formula which will either evaluate with 0 or 1. So deductive reasoning, all of the facts and rules ultimately translate into some disjunctive form or conclusive
Got it.
form which is 0 or 1. But here you cannot do that. You have to bring in fraction, either a fuzzy or a probabilistic or something which is there are models like it's called as paraconsistent logics, where you can probably even go on reasoning even though you have both P and not P. In the conventional logic, the biggest problem is if you say, something is true and something is not true, both of them you cannot have together, right? It can be thing can be only a true or a false. But in the real world, in the common sense reasoning, here it could be that partially something may be true, partially it may be false. That is one angle. Another angle is it is possible that there are scenarios where you are coming across contradictions as a way of life, but still multiple people may be right in their own sphere of influence. So there are
Yeah,
bias.
exactly. I know what you said. It's almost like the elections, right? The Trump versus Biden elections. That's exactly what it is. Everybody believes in their own sphere of knowledge.
Correct.
So so this abductive reasoning, essentially to some degree, from what I'm also understanding is that when you're trying to discover those causes, it may be true, it may not be true,
Exactly. So it
right?
is. it has an
There,
element of fuzziness. It has an element of
it has an element of fuzziness.
exactly.
So that's so interesting. Um, wow. And so you believe today AI cannot do deductive and abductive; it can only do inductive.
Yes, but
And right?
current research by some of the leading LLM guys, they have understood the value of deductive reasoning. So,
Okay.
in the A star framework and all the new framework that are coming up in the LLMs, they're trying to add the planning layer, which is the deductive reasoning kind of layer, which is basically going to augment the inductive component.
And do you believe the same transformer architecture and machine learning principles can they be used to get abductive reasoning, or do we have to discover a whole new way of teaching machines,
I
or
don't
whole
believe the
new way of
power of
machine?
transformers is good enough, given the fact that a simple deductive system. I'll tell you, which ChatGPT or any of the LLMs cannot do. If you say A is equivalent to B in logic, from that you can derive A implies B
Mm,
and B implies A.
mm,
Right? That's the logical
mm,
equivalence, right?
mm,
But
mm.
in current all the transformer based mechanisms, if A equivalent to B is given and A implies B is derived, they cannot derive B implies A
Oh wow.
because statistically there may not have been enough statistical instances where B was
B
true, A
equals to
was
A.
true,
Oh
or if
wow.
A is
Oh
true.
my God. Actually,
That's the
that's an
fundamental.
amazing. That's an amazing example. So you're saying if I tell a transformer model that A is equal to B, it cannot imply that B is equal to A because it doesn't have enough statistical data
Exactly.
behind
So it's not a.
it. Holy
It is
cow.
basically probably we can feed it. I don't know how it will work out, but
Sure,
this is a
sure,
big
sure.
logical flaw, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. Wow. Actually, that's huge. That's
That's
a great
huge.
example, by the way.
That's huge.
That's
In
a
fact, that
great
is one of the
example.
debated. You can see my LinkedIn. I think I've been posting on all of these things. A lot of things.
So when given that AI today is based on inductive reasoning, when people say things such as AI can summarize a document for you in a few lines, right? Um, do you think it's the same as a human being summarizing that document? Like if you were to read a document and summarize it versus ChatGPT, is inductive reasoning enough for it to summarize? Because that's the biggest application people are going after today, right? Everybody's trying to say AI can summarize.
Correct. You see, at a macro level, these use cases are good and ideal probably for the inductive reasoning. But if you put even any small catch there, they'll not be able to catch it. For example, I'll just give some example where some of the issues which are coming up are around this statistical too much reliance only on statistics, right? So when I'll say, okay, it's going to rain today, so let me carry an umbrella, okay. But I say, let us say I have a lot of sentences where I've given it may rain today, so I'll carry an umbrella, right? Or I can say, I don't know if it's going to rain today or not, but anyway, for just for safety, I will
Just
carry
for
an umbrella.
safety, I'll carry an umbrella.
But statistically, if you see, I'll carry an umbrella is related to rain, right? That concept, that's what they will associate. They may not go to the next level saying that is it at definite rain? Is it at probabilistic rain? Or maybe no rain, but still I'll carry an umbrella.
And it, to build on that analogy, if you don't mind,
Yep.
there's even one more deeper level, right? It is the insecurity of the human being that also plays into that decision of carrying an umbrella,
Agreed.
right?
Agreed.
It's not just a correlation between rain and the umbrella.
Right.
It's the correlation also exists with the insecurity of the human. So continue.
So that is exactly the whole issue, right? You base completely on statistical correlations, occurrences of words together. Ultimately, what is ChatGPT? It's about, if you see underlying, if you say I'm something to do with rain and then I'm something to do with umbrella, it's trying to correlate, saying that there are these concepts. So I will substitute this as a pattern, as a co-occurrence relationship. On top of it, I'll create some, self-supervised learning and understand that pattern. That's what this whole ChatGPT works on. So, for example, if I'll say, I am a king, I rule the world. I am a queen, I rule the world. I am a prince, I rule the world. So they'll find equivalence of king, pharaoh, queen, etc. That is statistical occurrence is the basis of this whole next word prediction in the ChatGPT. But does it have a logical relationship?
No, I understand what you're saying. Wow, that is amazing. Um, how do humans reason? How much does probability play into our own reasoning versus other mechanisms? Or how much does statistics play into our own reasoning?
You see, I think going by what I say, humans are very good at combining all the three reasoning.
Hmm.
Why I'm saying it is
Hmm.
because a lot of times, going by, typical sky condition and all, we try to infer potential rain. As a human, we know that this is most likely going to rain. That is, I think, inductive comes naturally, and deductive, because we are used to following the rules and derived rules, we understand it. But based on experience, as we see more and more examples of certain causes, really, that's the difference. I would say, even I'll go and stick my head out in the medicine field. That's the difference between Indian doctors and the Western doctors. Is the Indian doctors are
You
very
see
good at
a lot more
abductive reasoning.
cases. Yeah, they
Abductive
see a
reasoning.
lot more cases.
More
Yeah,
cases that gives them abductive capability. Whereas
very
if you only
interesting.
take a deductive approach, which is the Western approach, right? I make sure that I give write off tests based on all the inputs, and then I'll try to find the most likely cause. It's not. It's purely driven by a lot of you know background data which can support it. So they're looking for more the inductive approach, whereas a person who is doing with experience he'll be looking at common sense approach to having done similar cases. So one area where this is very commonly used is actually legal reasoning. Common sense
Hmm.
reasoning, the biggest use case is legal reasoning. I told you, right? Multiple
Hmm.
authors, multiple lawyers present points of view. They may be contradicting with each other, but still both of them exist in their own
Hmm.
universe. And at the same
Hmm.
time, they're also very good at identifying precedents from past cases and use that to justify current scenario. So doctors,
Well,
lawyers, right? These are people who are really, taking the practicality of common sense requirement in reasoning beyond just depending on statistics or depending on logical knowledge base.
so if I understand what you're saying, the outcome or the way the final decision at the end of the day is a probability, always, right?
Some
The
variant of it.
final
Some
decision
variant of
is
it.
some variant of but however, the way you derive that probability is what is different in the three cases, right? In some cases you're deriving it based on your own experience. In some cases you're deriving it based on statistical data, right? In some cases you're deriving it based on previous facts,
Uh,
right? The
so
way
in the
the
derived from the facts, you don't have a role. You don't have a role. It's actually the logical calculus itself which is deriving that.
Got it. Got it. Well, so what happens when we talk about things such as emotional intelligence, Dr. Srinivas? Would you say that that's just another input into abductive reasoning? That's what it is, right?
You see, I would not say human reasoning is only abductive, but it manifests in other forms, right? See, wherever there is uncertainty, right?
Mm, mm.
Uncertainty is the basic other name for the abductive reasoning. How do you model and reason in the presence of uncertainty? That is the basic, bigger picture about the whole concept of abductive reasoning. So when I say emotional intelligence, one big problem I have with a lot of very well-funded AI companies also is these people have taken it to high level of inductive reasoning, feed tons of human emotion examples and tag them, and
Yes.
then okay, they say that
It's
this
all
is
it's all inductive.
yeah,
Everything is based on large data
yes,
sets.
exactly. But is that enough? Because I'll tell you, for example, there may be scenario where you may be extremely painful because of some sad incident in your home, but you have to appear in the podcast because of forced circumstance. You're still laughing and showing positive emotion. Does that mean that you're actually happy? I'm just
Yeah.
thinking very, very, very,
Sure.
very
Sure.
contrived
Sure.
example, but
Sure. I can tell you I'm happy today. But yes, I know what you're saying. I completely understand. It makes total sense.
So
Do
statistical approach is limited.
it has a certain limitations, and I think in life everything is like that, right? You can't have a single approach to solve all problems. So that makes total
No,
sense to me.
but the point
Uh,
which I want to mention, which is very negative, which is where I and my company we work on, is see in doing the statistical derivation, right? Sometimes there is a tendency to fill in gaps, even though the statistical inference may not be quantum, may not be high, but you are forced to fill certain
Correct.
gaps, and that is where the hallucinations start to come in.
Fair enough.
And that is why
Fair
you need
enough.
to have proper auditing or QA to make sure that you're not consuming what is coming as correct knowledge. And that is the other risk, which is not a risk of this thing. It's a human risk, which is the comfort and laziness of the current generation consuming chat gpt is the high fidelity it ascribes to chat gpt, which is the danger.
Yeah. Yeah, it is true. I think that is one of the biggest risks is that over a point in time, especially people who don't understand what an AI model is, how it works, etc., they're going to start in a year or two, whatever ChatGPT says is going to become the truth, right? Or
No,
whatever an AI model says
I'm
is going to
worried
become the truth.
about I'm worried about the young teenage generation. They have not seen the reality. They're only directly jumping
Yeah,
in the chat GPT world. And
yeah.
for them, even science is chat GPT.
In ChatGPT or essentially in AI, let's leave ChatGPT, right? Let's broaden the subject to all artificial intelligence. Um, where do you then see its application today, Dr. Srinivas? These new models that have come out, like Anthropic or Bard or any of them, every task that a human does can be done with nuance, art, skill, etc., or can be done in a very rudimentary way, right? I'll just take document summarization as an example. I still believe that when I look at a document and if I read it, the points that I will extract from it are going to be very different from what an AI model will extract from it, right? So when people say you can use AI for document summarization, I'm hesitant. I'm like, how can that be possible? Because I will see so much more facts and information that it won't be able to see. So, what is the real use case for this inductive reasoning? Are there certain places where you think that it actually can be used right now?
Okay. So my principle is that I would always say this whole AI, generative AI, can be a great, augmentation tool. So when you say augmentation, you should not treat it for replacing human. So very similar scenario in your example of document summarization. So let me give you a perspective of, let's say, an instance where you have given a lot of description about some medical, diagnosis, etc. But in between, you will see there are two or three specific cases. Let's say the document has listed, which is very specialized case of some cancer, some something which the doctor knows that it has to be highlighted. But an AI model, I'm sure, will miss out because they will try to abstract the summary of the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
So what happens is, I think I would let the first level be done by Anthropic or ChatGPT or Bard or Perplexity. But I would go back and put the human feedback into it.
I'm not convinced that, if a human can read, but I understand what you're saying in the sense of augmentation of human and AI. But from from our conversation today, I still believe a human needs to go in and read the finer details for us to get the true essence of what that
So
document
I
is.
meant
Right?
that. I meant, so if you
Oh,
want
okay.
to get the
Sorry.
first
Okay.
level, see, for example, I am also into software engineering because I'm testing, right? I'm a
Okay.
QA guy. So what I do is I suggest to people that use Copilot, but get their first level template,
Got it.
but
Okay.
you have to refine it.
Got it.
You have to
Okay.
refine it for the domain specific use case. So I have strong belief that I don't know if a very extremely detailed level test case design or detailed level code generation can be correctly, derived from, unless there was a precise similar code for similar exact use case in some previous code which it has archived. So I always believe in this fact that get the first 40% productivity with this, or maybe 60%. I don't know. In some scenarios, it could be 60%, especially for mundane things like you give me the plumbing code for database connection or plumbing code for three-tier application. So I don't think that I have to worry about. Today, I'm very convinced about the quality of output from all the Copilot tools, etc. But the last mile is always going to be the human. And
Mm,
especially in my domain, which is verification and validation, which is testing, I strongly believe
mm.
you cannot rely on a complete test case generated purely from a GPT or Anthropic. So,
That's amazing. So I want to take a little bit of a tangent here. We've spoken a lot about reasoning, right? So reasoning is, like you said, the ability to deduct, the ability to induct, etc. I also want to talk about creativity. Do you see that different? Do you see creativity a bit different from reasoning? Like the ability to come out with new ideas, new concepts, new thoughts. Um,
so yeah. So
would
let
you
me tell
distinguish
you
that a little bit?
my approach to thinking of creativity in the current so-called tools, Midjourney or whether it is ChatGPT, is all that it is basically taking a statistical filling again. It's like fill the unknowns with statistical approximations from knowledge you already have. So I don't see that as real creativity. For example, I can usually create something like a donkey with the stripes by superimposing samples of horse and zebra, donkey and zebra. That's what the current all the diffusion models etc are pretty good at, which is basically taking data from multiple inputs, cross fertilizing and trying to create something which has not been known to humans. Same thing, they'll generate a human face, which is an approximation from here and there. You can also see your own self aging and all that. Those are all fine, but I don't think they're doing creativity in the real creativity sense. Like you go to a creative artist, and let's say I was trying to recently, I can send you the video. I was saying that there is a video which says this is something Midjourney or this cannot do. What the guy has done is he's taken a small canvas and done a small nail. He just pricked it with hand. It caused some cracks, right? And that cracks is using as the base for creating the contours of a design. And that is creativity. That is something which has taken a natural result of a crash, got that contours and trying to create something, and that's human level creativity. It's not something which has been taught by some existing image. So
And you think that's a human trait?
that's a human trait. Exactly,
Or,
exactly.
yeah, okay, very interesting. And so today you don't see ChatGPT or any of these AI models being able to even come close to that level of creativity.
See, point is ultimately human eye, right? Sometimes human eye likes good patterns generated from multiple things. It may appeal, so they may sell it for $1 million AI generated art. But whether it is going to discover the original Monet, I don't know. I have a serious feeling that even the best creative output from an AI will be based on approximations from existing data. Ultimately, it's
Got it.
about
Yeah.
data prediction, right? Based on what it is already
It is
seen.
true, and also it's so difficult to talk about these topics without getting a little philosophical, right? It almost feels like creativity. You need to have emotion. You need to have difficulty, some need. There has to be some other intangibles in order for you to create, right?
Correct. But at the same time, I really feel sad that, we as consumers, right? I call myself consumer because I'm not a creator. I'm very sad to see that, even simpler forms of art, which can be done by these approximations, are kind of depriving the real creative artists, because not everybody may not be able to do that level of creativity. So maybe there's some level of creativity is pure statistical approximation which has now been conquered by our mid journeys. So that's actually, especially in the area of I think copywriting, right? If you see English copywriting, it's not that you have too much variety of it. There's a standard pattern you're going to check, and that is already present in statistical literature. So the chat GPTs are able to do that good or better than human copywriters or similarly low level artists. So I think what the issue has happened is the bar of creativity has gone up. Just like in same thing. See, if you see the analogy of software development, right? The low code, simple use cases are being taken care by the copilot, but the specific nuances, like for example, I'll tell you one very simple thing. If you have to really customize your code for a multi-threaded three-tier cache GPU, I'm not sure if actually there is something with a copilot can do. You have to bring in the parallel programming expert, right? So in all the
Yes,
fields,
you're
this
right.
principle is holding.
In every field, it'll raise the bar.
It'll
That
raise a
is true.
bar. Low hanging fruits will unfortunately get consumed by the statistical approximation engines.
Yes, that is true. And even the world of strategy, I see this, right? Like if you take a simple comparative analysis where you have to compare two companies, Chat GPT or any of these AI engines can do that today.
Right.
But if you want to go to the more nuanced comparative analysis, right? So today, if you do a comparative analysis, you have to have a level of sophistication that is beyond the basics in order for you to be successful.
Correct. You should understand the product,
Totally true.
solution, services in
Correct.
more detail.
Correct. Correct. You got to have more nuance to it. It makes a lot of sense. Dr. Srinivas, this has been amazing. I just love the conversation today. Anything else you want to share with our guests on this topic of reasoning or creativity and AI
So
use
I would
cases?
only say that you see already people are realizing the need for LMs to include deductive reasoning by planning, by combining logical rules like knowledge graphs, etc., into that. There's a lot of work now happening, and I hope very soon they'll also start including more fuzzy or common sense frameworks like probabilistic reasoning frameworks. In fact, some people have gone to the level that maybe at a chip level we should in fact use more close to human brain kind of thing. That's where the Neuralink and the whole chips which are neuromorphic or neural based chips rather than digital 0 1 kind of thing that is coming up. That is something I think what I can tell you is future is going to be about hybrid of all the three. Okay, we started out with inductive. Now where people are realizing there's need for adding deductive, but very soon we'll also see a lot more so-called common sense reasoning framework.
Well, Dr. Srinivas, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for being our guest today. Truly appreciate it.
Sure. I just want to add one more thing, which is basically
Sure.
my own specialization. While I do a lot in the reasoning, but now my full focus is on creating trusted, secure, and responsible AI by basically making sure that all models, AI models, are tested on multiple dimensions on privacy, security, ethical dimension, and functional correctness before deployment. And what I find
Why?
sad is most deployments today are happening without being completely tested.
Can you spend a few minutes to tell us about that, right? Tell us about how you're working on this. How, if our customers are interested in testing in these areas, how can they leverage your expertise?
So, as I said, right, about 5 years back, we started this whole journey of exploring validation of AI systems. And what we found is the current system of validation is very focused on getting functional accuracy 90%, 95%. And that's based on randomized selection, or taking, cross validation and saying I'm 95% accurate, 99% accurate. But what that validation does is it tells you from a statistically sampled test data, I'm giving so much so accuracy. But is that good enough for a customer who is going to deploy the AI system? I think even for a small Android application, right? We do thorough testing. We do testing of the functionality. We do testing of the usability. We do testing of the security. We do testing of the interoperability. We do testing of the performance. But in AI models, somehow the data scientists have gone away with murder. I would say simply as simple as that. So I think we have to educate the data science and AI community about the software engineering principles for building systems. You should know that they should be vigilant for creating a testing regime into the whole pipeline of AI. So when I say testing, I think there are one more complication is it's not just functional testing or the typical ISO testing for functional suitability or security or privacy, but it's also about the new emerging dimensions because of AI. So, in fact, today ISO is working on definitions of new kind of expectations for what you expect as characteristics for AI. Right? For example, you are expected to be transparent, you're expected to be ethical, you're expected to be privacy preserving. So these are dimensions which are not tested in current data science projects or in AI system. So you have to have a testing perform like which can test on functional, of course, coverage, which is all kinds of scenarios of input. You have to test for ethical dimension, which is very important because a lot of legislation and compliance laws are coming up now, which are going to say that you cannot deploy a biased application. So then you have to look at the dimensions of security. The new kind of hack vectors are coming up where people are attacking AI systems with adversarial attacks. Then all the question of data which you're using to train the AI systems, is it conformant to laws of the land about privacy? Or have you taken permissions right level for PII to be used in training? So that is why I think, first of all, basic level of AI models with deep learning itself was not putting enough attention. And now with generative AI, it's even more worse. So the governments across the world are trying to come up with a scenario where companies will be forced to deploy, evaluations of these models on these dimensions before going into the market. But
before going live
correct.
with it.
So that's why
So, Dr.
EU AI.
Srinivas, if our audience wants to reach you to discuss this more, how can they find you?
So I have my email ID. You can share with them, and basically our company AI insured product actually does that. So we have three things. We have a certification for people who want to develop expertise in validating AI systems. In fact, we were the world's first AI testing certification. It's so popular that uh, you know 8 countries got popularly evaluated and got tested and trained people. More than 4,000 QA professionals trained on it. And then what happened? ISTQB, which is the world's leading body for testers to be certified, they adopted our syllabus and they've launched it about a year back with a test called
Oh, fantastic.
AI testing. So that's from the competency perspective, from a solution for how to do this so that testers are not the most complex programmers, right? So we created a zero code product out of it, which is what we call as AI Ensure. And in fact, recently we were invited by Government of India or GPAI Summit, if you remember. We were one of the few companies who were displaying our solution for making sure that you are deploying responsible AI by default using our tool rather than post facto. So a lot of times, what happens is compliance becomes post facto. So,
Yeah,
we believe in security, privacy, ethics, and transparency as by design, rather than by after you get reaction from government or from customers.
fantastic. So we'll make sure that we put a link in our webpage in this podcast for whoever is listening to it on Dr. Srinivas's email address, and also a link to your company and your product so that people have access to it and they can reach you as needed. But thanks a lot, Dr. Srinivas. This has been amazing. Well, Dr. Srinivas, thank you so much for this episode today. It was amazing to break down reasoning into its different parts and also being able to compare human reasoning to artificial intelligence. I think that was a priceless conversation. I'm pretty sure all our audience would enjoy it. So thank you for spending this time with us. Truly appreciate it. Um, I do think we're going to do a second podcast with you. And the second one will be on responsible AI, where we'll dive into it. So we look forward to having you a second time on our podcast series. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Arvind, really interesting interview. Would you pick out a couple of the key points that we all need to take home and have a think about?
Yeah, I think it's so refreshing to finally talk to someone who can break down the different forms of reasoning. Stuart, from when AI came out, I've been asking this question, right? Why does it reason different from humans? What is it that it's doing? And he broke it down so well, right? And I'm going to try to summarize a few of those things. I think the first thing he told us was that there's three forms of reasoning. There's inductive reasoning, abductive, and deductive reasoning, right? And inductive reasoning is the more inference-based reasoning, and deductive reasoning is the more logical reasoning. So deductive reasoning is what all of us know from way back to the Greek times, like Aristotle and all of these folks. Logical reasoning is how we've been trained and how we think, right? If A is equal to B, then we know that B is equal to A, right? There's a logical reasoning going on. And AI, inductive reasoning, is more statistical, probabilistic reasoning, which is a little different. And so that was the biggest first takeaway for me, is the difference between those two forms of reasoning. And today LLMs are capable of only inductive reasoning. So this is the reason why LLMs can't be applied in all situations. So for example, in a factory, if you're trying to manage schedules and do predictive maintenance, then there's a lot of logical reasoning involved, a lot of mathematical reasoning involved, and their LLMs may not fare that well. So what we heard from him is that the older methods, or the classical methods of AI, which is called symbolic AI, the more logical forms of AI reasoning, have to be combined with LLMs in order for it to truly work in many different situations. And humans deploy all three, right? We deploy inductive, abductive, deductive, which is why, and maybe 10 other forms of reasoning, which is why our intelligence is more complex than LLMs today. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway was, do not believe LLMs can be applied in every situation. Today, they are more applicable in situations where inductive reasoning is needed, but in situations where, like predictive maintenance, or in situations where you're trying to calculate complex mathematical, logical equations, etc., you need other forms of reasoning. And from what I'm hearing, these other forms of reasoning are being developed, and they are in research mode today. So it is very encouraging that these two forms of reasoning are going to come together. And if anybody's interested in learning more about this, the topic they need to look for is neuro-symbolic AI. Neuro stands for neural networks, which we all know are LLMs and ChatGPT, etc. And symbolic is the older, more classical form of AI, which involves logical reasoning. And so neuro-symbolic AI is what business leaders need to be reading up on, so that they don't blindly deploy LLMs for every form of intelligence or reasoning based applications that they have today.
Fascinating. Well, that's it for today. And all it leaves me to say is thanks so much to Arvind Ravashankar.
Thank you, Stuart.
If you like our podcast, please like, subscribe, or tell a friend. I'm Stuart Black, and we'll see you next time on Unpacked.